Right now on the National Weather Desk, disappearing lake. It appeared following last year's record rainfall in California. Now it's almost gone. Right now on the National Weather Desk, disappearing lake. It appeared following last year's record rainfall in California. Now it's almost gone.
Farming in the area is making a comeback.
A landspout tornado is caught on camera out west. What you need to know about this weather phenomenon. Planting trees, the important reason Iowa is working to replace trees destroyed by a derecho.
This new data just kind of shows us we're on the right track.
Climate change. New studies show the impact that it's having on the Arctic Ocean, coral on the ocean floor, and even ski resorts. How AI is revolutionizing climate and weather.
To make more accurate and hyper-local short-term and long-term weather predictions.
We'll have a detailed explanation about next month's total solar eclipse.
The sun and the earth and the moon don't always line up exactly.
And what happens when a moose meets feet of fresh snow.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. The next 24 to 48 hours are going to be very wet in the Northeast, and all that rain could trigger floods. Here's a look at New York City this morning, where you can see low clouds and fog are shrouding the city, but the rain is on the way. Flood watches are posted from New Jersey to Boston. The heaviest rain is expected across southern New England. Places like Providence don't need the precipitation. This has been the second wettest meteorological winter there since 1905. Friday will be dry, then more rain will move in on Saturday. Check this out. This is a landspout that touched down in northeast Oregon yesterday. The National Weather Service confirmed at least one landspout was observed. And landspouts are a type of tornado, but they form differently than a typical tornado. They occur when winds collide at the surface level and make their own vortex as a thunderstorm passes overhead. They're generally much smaller and weaker than regular tornadoes, which work their way down to the surface. All the snow that fell in California since last week did wonders for the state's water supply. According to the UC Berkeley Central Sierra Snow Lab, statewide snow water equivalent is now at 104% of normal. Back in January, it was just 28%. California is also at 94% of the April 1st normal, which means there's a very good chance of reaching 100% by then. In Fresno, California, a massive lake created by floodwaters a year ago has just about dried up. Rich Rodriguez has more.
Tulare Lake in Kings County now looks more like a pond than a lake. Water covers only 2,600 acres. Last spring, when runoff from 5 rivers sent water streaming into Kings County, it took more than 120,000 acres out of production. Many predicted it would take years for the water to subside. Now, less than a year later, farming in the area is making a comeback.
And we've got tractors and trucks moving around, and fields are getting prepared to start growing crops again.
1 out of every 4 jobs in Kings County are ag-related. A year ago, Mary Breckenridge's 650 acres of pistachios were underwater. She worried too much water would drown her trees. Luckily, the water eventually drained off her land. She has 74,000 trees and only lost about 2 dozen. Breckenridge adds the pistachio harvest last fall was fabulous.
So to get this area back to where it needs to be, which is to farm, is a big deal for us.
Where water still stands, it's deep enough for the sheriff's office to launch its boat. But no one knows how much longer before this final patch of lake dries up and goes back into production.
Texas fire officials continue the battle against several record-breaking wildfires in the state's panhandle. The Smokehouse Creek fire is the largest of them and is the biggest one in the state history. It's already burned more than 1 million acres, destroyed 500 structures, and killed 2 civilians. It's only 37% contained. Unfortunately, it's not the last of fire weather. Officials warn that'll return later on this week.
The fire's not over yet. Even though progress has been made, it is wrong if anybody thinks the fire is over and they can let down their guard.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott says 70% of Hemphill County, home to the city of Canadian, has been burned. Nearly 50 families have been displaced. It's been almost 4 years since the 2020 derecho took out nearly 700,000 trees in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The loss of the tree canopy is significant as it had increased major hotspots in the city. Meteorologist Rebecca Kopelman has more on the effort to replace all of those trees.
Iowa is experiencing increased floods and extreme heat events because of climate change.
We are feeling the heat even more following the massive tree loss in the 2020 derecho. The city of Cedar Rapids participated in the National Spot the Hot program over the summer to determine where the hot spots are in town.
There's a strong connection between tree loss and our increased heat.
Planting trees, obviously, is one of the quick and easy things that a community can do to mitigate the heat island, and we are doing that, and it's guided by the satellite data. And this new data just kind of shows us we're on the right track.
Studies also show the presence of trees improves mental and physical health and helps reduce the impacts of high heat events.
With trees, now there's an understanding of their value.
The city is working to replace hundreds of thousands of trees that were lost, but also being intentional about which trees.
So with climate change, we're seeing more and more cities that are attempting to understand what should be the species replacement. What are the trees that might be capable of withstanding increased heat or drought or other conditions.
In recent years, there's been an increase in heat-related illness and death, and because of climate change, we see that is predicted to increase over the next coming decades. So even our own personal experiences may not be enough to prepare us for what's coming next.
We have several stories this morning on the impact climate change is having on our world, from the mountains to the ocean, both underwater and on the surface. We start in the Arctic Ocean, which a new study says could soon see its first ice-free days. That's defined as less than 386,000 square miles of ice. Researchers say it could happen as soon as September of 2025. By the year 2100, the Arctic Ocean could be ice-free from May to January. No one knows exactly what the consequences could be, but the ecological impact is expected to be considerable. Climate change is also taking a toll on our ocean's coral. The head of NOAA's Coral Reef Watch coordinator says we are sitting on the cusp of the worst coral bleaching event in the history of the planet. This map shows the oceans rapidly warming in the tropics, fueled by heat from climate changes in El Nino. As Reuters reports, NOAA expects coral bleaching across most of the southern hemisphere this year, including Australia's famous Great Barrier Reef. When bleaching happens, coral becomes pale and vulnerable to starvation and disease. The last global mass coral bleaching event was from 2014 to 2017. And finally, U.S. ski areas lost $5 billion from 2000 to 2019 as a result of human-caused climate change. That's according to a new Canadian study, which also found losses could tally $1 billion a year starting in 2050. The average ski season during those years was up to a week shorter than the last 2 decades of the 1900s. The most optimistic climate scenarios show ski seasons could be another month shorter by 2050. And in the cost of making more snow, the financial losses quickly add up. We count on viewers like you to send us pictures and videos to our stations across the country through the Chime-In platform. Here's a few that caught our attention yesterday. This comes from Wheeling, West Virginia, where meteorologist Jeff Exling posted on Facebook. As you can see, the deer had an extra spring in her step as she ran up the stairs, but she quickly changed her mind, deciding it was better to jump off the porch and run away with at least 3 other deer. And there's so much snow in the mountains of northeast Utah, this moose appeared to stumble as it walked up this hill in this person's backyard. This video was submitted to our station in Salt Lake City. We don't know much more about the story than what we see here. An estimated 2,500 to 3,000 moose live in Utah, and they can stand more than 6 feet tall at the shoulder. Now let's check to see the weather in cities across the country today. We start in Dayton, Ohio, which saw plenty of overnight rain, but those showers are moving out, leading to a cloudy day and highs in the lower 50s. Next up is the capital of New York, where Albany was shrouded in fog this morning. It's going to be a wet day as rain moves in this afternoon. The high should be around 55 degrees. Next up is Port Arthur in eastern Texas. That's along the Gulf of Mexico near Beaumont. They're looking at a mostly cloudy day with a high of 78 degrees. And finally, we head to Appleton, Wisconsin, where Harry Houdini grew up in the late 1800s. No illusion that today's weather in Appleton makes it our pick of the day. They're looking at sunny skies and a high of 50. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll take a look at the ways AI technology is revolutionizing the field of meteorology. Plus tips on what you can do now to ensure a healthy spring garden.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look at the Northeast. We have a warm day in the Northeast. Today, temps are going to surge back into the 50s with a narrow window of sun. There will be some rain over northern New England and parts of New York. Here we are, 7 a.m. Notice that narrow window of sun is closing in during the course of the afternoon. More rain moves in late today through tonight. Flood watches have been issued through southern New England. We should be clearing it out on Thursday.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Tuesday has been fairly wet, and Wednesday will be the same. We'll have scattered showers, especially as we move through the afternoon, and then this storm system will start to slowly fade away as we move in the overnight hours, with perhaps a stray shower lingering on Thursday. Temperatures still fairly much above average, but we're in the 50s, and that'll be the case as we head into Thursday and Friday. At least Friday is looking nice and dry. We will not warm up again until we get to later next week.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. We have another above average day for most of us. A weak front moved through the area in the afternoon, overnight hours. And we will see temperatures again remaining above average, upper 70s in South Florida, 80s in Orlando and Tallahassee, 70s along most of the Gulf Coast. These showers will continue to progress throughout the northeastern part of the area, affecting South Carolina, North Carolina, the mountain area. And then most of us will have cloudy conditions.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Here's a look at recent snow in Northern California south of the Oregon border, and a foggy view framed with greenery in Pawleys Island, South Carolina. In Abingdon, Virginia, these tulips are urging springtime to catch up. A vibrant scene to start the day in Tennessee, and back in Virginia, a sunset snapshot to wrap up Monday along the James River.
For more content like this, like the National Weather Desk on Facebook.
We continue our countdown to the solar eclipse across America. We're now only 33 days away. Today we want to go in depth and show you exactly how the eclipse comes together. To do that, we're going to use some 3D technology. Here is Ohio meteorologist Marshall McPeak.
Well, what you have here is a very simplistic representation of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. So obviously, none of it's to scale, but you get the idea here. The Moon travels around the Earth. Its orbit, though, is just slightly askew by about 5 degrees or so. So because of that, the Sun and the Earth and the Moon don't always line up exactly. However, every once in a while, the Moon's orbit does bring it into alignment with the Earth and the Sun. It crosses what's called the plane of the ecliptic. That's an imaginary line that runs between the centers of the Earth, the Sun, and actually a whole lot of the planets in the solar system. And when 3 celestial objects align, we call that syzygy, which happens to be one of my favorite words of all time. And as they align, then the Moon casts a shadow on the Earth, and part of that shadow is very light. That part is called the penumbra. The smaller, darker shadow, which is what's going to run through Ohio next month, is called the umbra. And as the Moon aligns, it's still in motion. The Earth is also still rotating, so that shadow is going to travel very quickly across the surface of the planet. Now, for us, it's just a few minutes where day turns to night, and we get a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So we will see you in the shadow on April 8th.
We mentioned the Texas wildfires a little earlier, but one group that is being hit especially hard are cattle farmers. Thousands of cattle have been killed in those fires, and agricultural experts say it's only going to get worse. Amanda Henderson has more.
Devastating wildfires continue to rip through North Texas, leaving a deadly trail of destruction.
This is a very, very stressful time for these families. They've lost homes that have been in the family over 100 years, and many of them only have the clothes on their back.
Texas Department of Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller says the fires have killed at least 3,000 cattle.
That will double, triple, quadruple before this is over. We will end up having to euthanize a lot of cattle that have got burnt hooves and burnt udders that just won't be able to nurse, and we'll have to put those down. Unfortunately, that's sad.
The cost of cattle and fencing is adding up quickly, each mile costing about $10,000. Add that to the lack of hay and water the area is seeing.
This area of the state hasn't made a cotton crop in 2 years, 2 complete failures. So they're not going into this all that financially sound. Then you lose all your cattle.
It's going to be a 2 or 3 year process before we start leveling out.
Jeremy Johnson owns Rancho de los Niños, about an hour and a half from San Antonio. He says the losses could lead to a shortage of certain beef for some time.
Is just going to be a shortage next year too, because again, with these calves that are being born right now, they're not going to have these calves for next year.
A reality Commissioner Miller says wouldn't necessarily mean higher prices. He says they are trying to address the fire's impacts as soon as they can.
It's going to be a struggle for some of these families just to hang on to the family legacy, the family farm or the family ranch.
Hundreds of thousands of salmon have been found dead in California's Klamath River. Sophia Bruinsma spoke to the Department of Fish and Wildlife and people living in the area to find out what caused the massive die-off.
The California Department of Fish and Wildlife report that about 830,000 fall run Chinook salmon died after being released Monday, February 26th. CDFW reports the reason behind the mortality is due to gas bubble disease.
And gas bubble disease basically happens when there's a cause of head pressure to a fish.
But some residents in the area are skeptical.
It's plausible, but I think it's unlikely because there's not a big differential. Number one, the water behind the dam is gone. And going through the tunnel is virtually at river level on both sides of the dam, on the upstream side and downstream.
The salmon were reportedly released into Fall Creek, a tributary of the Klamath River just above Iron Gate Dam.
And the river conditions looked great. All the other water quality and turbidity and dissolved oxygen, all of those things were reading at suitable levels.
But when asked about where the water was tested, it's still unclear.
And you're saying that the water levels tested were healthy levels. Where exactly were you testing that?
That is a great question that I don't know, but I will find out.
Residents of the area are worried that the deaths have more to do with water quality since the dam removals.
And I live across the street from the river. I can just go out the front of my cabin and look at the river. The river is polluted. I mean, it's heavy with clay sediments.
Well, the transition period between winter and spring can be tricky for gardeners. And when is the right time to start planting when temperatures start feeling warmer? Kit Alexander has a few tips.
With the arrival of warmer temperatures, it can be tempting to plant sensitive vegetation and plants. But as many of you know, cold spells are not quite done yet. Much of the United States experiences a wide range of temperature swings in the spring months. It's not uncommon to have high temperatures in the 70s one day and temperatures in the 40s the next day. The average last freeze can vary widely depending on your local climate, as seen in this map. For warm weather vegetation, it's important to take the proper precautions to help sensitive vegetation survive. During cold overnights, experts say to cover the plant with breathable fabric, draped loosely to allow air circulation. The National Weather Service recommends covering up the plants before the sun sets to help retain the heat near the plant. Materials such as plastic should be removed before the temperatures begin to rise, as plastic can result in more damage.
AI is having major impacts on our lives, and you may be surprised to learn that AI is also changing the way you understand weather. Meteorologist Emily Gracie looks at 5 ways AI is revolutionizing weather and climate.
AI algorithms can analyze huge amounts of data from various sources like weather stations and radar to make more accurate and hyper-local short-term and long-term weather predictions. AI can process and interpret complex climate data more effectively than traditional computer models. This enables researchers to better understand climate patterns, model future climate scenarios, and study the impacts of climate change. AI systems can analyze historic data and current conditions to predict the likelihood and intensity of severe weather events like hurricanes, floods, and heat waves. This allows for better preparedness and mitigation strategies. AI can quickly translate forecasts into different languages, making time-sensitive, life-saving weather information accessible to all. AI can analyze real-time satellite data post-natural disaster to identify areas in need of assistance and accessibility of roads. It can also analyze social media posts to identify urgent needs and target effective relief efforts.
Time now for a short break, but first let's take to the skies over the town of Skykomish in Washington State.
Good Wednesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. Chilly across the northern plains, including some light snow showers. And we've got rain across the Ohio Valley moving its way to the east throughout the day today. And then more rain starts to move into Kansas and Missouri heading into the day tomorrow. Even portions of Iowa getting into some of that rain. Now that continues working its way towards the Great Lakes in the Ohio Valley on Friday. And temperatures running just a little bit above normal as we head through the next few days.
Good Wednesday morning to you. Meteorologist Chris Suchelli at our forecast today across the region, starting off with a bit of a chill in Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle, otherwise 50s and 60s elsewhere. Marginal severe weather risk in central North Texas through the afternoon into the evening. And then Thursday, especially late day Thursday into Thursday night, risk to see a few severe storms develop across Texas and Oklahoma. As our next system moves in, we'll see high 60s, 70s to near 80.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. Still well below normal for much of the Pacific Northwest and stretching in across parts of Idaho and Montana and Wyoming as well, where we're continuing to get some snow, especially heavy snow in southern Oregon and southern Idaho, stretching up even into across the Rockies. But we've got more rain stretching down, pretty light rain and onshore flow for California for wet weather ahead. That's the scene from here.
The National Weather Desk.
Severe weather week continues for parts of the country. Charleston meteorologist Charleston Clark recently posted it on TikTok about the dangers of wind and hail and things you can do to protect yourself.
Hail and wind, you're going to want to move indoors and away from windows. Again, if you've got a strong enough wind gust, it can pick up some debris and get it flying towards your house, and you do not want to be near those windows in case that happens. And another thing I want to add with the wind is make sure that if you know that it's going to be breezy or windy for the day ahead or the next day, make sure that you try and pick up any loose objects that you might have outside in your backyard or on your patio and secure them. You don't want your fun little decorations flying away, right? So make sure you secure any loose objects that you might have outside as well.
We'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Just search the National Weather Desk or scan the QR code on the bottom left corner of your screen. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us. I'm meteorologist Matt Ritter. Make it a great Wednesday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.